Did you miss your deadline to renew your Medicaid coverage? You can still send your completed annual review form to Healthy Connections Medicaid. You may be assigned to another health plan, but you can ask to come back to First Choice within 60 days of renewed Medicaid eligibility. It's your family. It's your choice. First Choice is the right choice. Renew and choose us. Visit selecthealthofsc.com/renew to learn more.
This is a CNA podcast.
Hello there, I'm Steve Lai. If you've been watching the news lately, you'll have noticed that extreme weather events have been featuring regularly throughout the year.
Mother Nature showing no mercy.
With record high temperatures recorded in the West,
both the United States and Europe are sweltering under this historic heat wave. Europe facing its worst drought in 500 years.
To floods in South Asia.
A severe flooding in Pakistan turned roads into rivers, leaving more than half the country submerged in water.
Sweeping away lives and livelihoods. And there's more to come. The US National Weather Service predicts a 65% chance of an above-normal hurricane season, which would be the 7th consecutive year of above-average activity. On this episode of CNA Correspondent, you'll hear how China has suffered its most severe heatwave in 6 decades. And even as the temperature has started to drop, its problems could just be heating up.
After a 2-month-long dry spell, China's drought-hit areas are experiencing heavy rains that have forced more than 100,000 people to be evacuated. The extreme weather events are also having an impact on more than 2 million hectares of arable land and 350,000 livestock. And that could further push up food prices.
My colleague Wei Su there introducing a story by our Shanghai correspondent, Minmin, who's been busy traveling to different parts of China to cover the impact of these extreme weather events, and who joins me now to give you the inside track from the front line of these stories. Minmin, thanks for making some time for me today. Let's start with the heatwave first that started in mid-June. Where have you been and what have you seen?
I was first in Shanghai and we were looking at record high over 40 degrees Celsius temperature here. But it wasn't just Shanghai. The government had issued red alerts for more than 80 cities in July. And that's nearly half of China that was affected by this heat wave, where peak temperatures reached 45 degrees Celsius. So then in August, I headed to the worst affected area, which is Chongqing. And the moment I landed, it literally feels like I stepped in front of an open, heated oven. And over there were 66 rivers and 25 reservoirs that had dried up. And we passed by a wildfire one night, a forest wildfire. There were a total of 14 wildfires that had broken out there. Some of them took as long as 6 days to put out.
Yeah, I remember seeing images of you as you were doing your live crosses with us on CNA, and you were just standing with this line of a wildfire behind you. Is a remarkable sight to see. And I imagine while you were there, you were able to speak to people on the ground to get an idea of how they were coping day to day, especially on top of all the COVID restrictions that must have really complicated things.
What I found really fascinating was that in Sichuan province, when I went to the subway stations, I saw there were crowds of people there in the corridors and on the stairways, and they were there to take advantage of the free air conditioning. And I mean, these people actually brought little stools and tables, and they're chilling there for hours. There are middle-aged men and women with their friends playing cards in the subway station, and their parents with their kids there. Some of them are just playing games on their phones. So it's quite a sight. And I realized when I spoke to them that some of them don't have air conditioning at home, or the cooling system at home isn't as strong, or they simply can't afford to fork out over 1,000 yuan a month, that's about $150 a month, on electricity bills to keep their homes cool.
Yeah, it's quite a remarkable situation to be in for residents, particularly if your home is just not prepared for it and you're just not used to this kind of weather. So with that in mind, then, what have authorities been doing to mitigate the impact of the heat wave? We saw you reported on wells being dug to reach underground water supplies.
Yes, the authorities have also been trying the cloud seeding method to induce rain. The problem with that is that it's now causing torrential rains in the drought-hit areas, causing the government to issue flood alerts. They also released more water from the Three Gorges Dam, about 500 million cubic meters of it. But there is a problem with this as well. It might come at the expense of future power generation capacity, especially when we hit the winter season when demand for electricity for heating would go up. The other precaution that they're taking is that by issuing these red alerts, they're actually triggering relevant departments to take measures to prevent heat stroke, for instance. So working hours for laborers in high temperature environments have to be reduced. Government departments are providing items like blocks of ice to cool down working stations. And these days, the COVID workers out there, they no longer wear full PPE because those hazmat suits are extremely stifling. They don't absorb your sweat very well, so all your body fluids would be collecting inside the suit, and it's extremely uncomfortable to wear.
Yeah, it's so complicated, isn't it, with all the COVID restrictions that we're seeing continuing to be rolled out as China clings to its zero COVID approach. Stay right with us, Minmin. Next on CNA Correspondent, Minmin will tell you how the heat wave has affected everything from food security to energy supplies and how the extreme weather is far from over.
Hi, my name is Julie Yu, and I'm the host of the new season of the Climate Conversations. From chefs to scientists, join me as we get personal with the people driving change in sustainability. Look out for our episodes wherever you get your podcasts.
The key is that it can't be planted. Whatever you do, you can't grow anything. We're in the field every day, but we can't do it. I can't harvest any cabbage these days. The crops have all died.
That was Wang Yongfu, a farmer in Chongqing, talking about the dire situation he's facing as a result of the prolonged heatwave. You're with me, Steve Lai, and CNA correspondent Minmin, who spoke with Mr. Wang about the challenges he was facing. And Minmin, it's not just crop farmers that have been hit hard. Animal farmers have also been heavily impacted.
That's right. The same farmer you've just heard told me that several of his chickens died, including, he said, his biggest one that weighed over 4 kg. I could tell he was really disappointed about that. According to government statistics, 350,000 livestock were affected by the heat wave, along with 2 million hectares of arable land. So those land account for about 30% of China's rice production, and it's quite a significant impact.
Yeah, it certainly is. What has this meant for food production and food security as well? How big of a concern is it?
Well, crops are affected and livestock are dying. So when supply go down, prices go up. So already in July, we're looking at fresh fruits and veggie prices going up between 10 to 20%. Pork prices also went up over 20%. And it's not just because of livestock dying. Meat prices are also affected by the feed industry. And some major feed producers said in August that they're raising the prices of pig, poultry, and fish feeds because of rising costs of grains. And that's because agricultural imports of grains have also been affected by the drought. The Yangtze River is actually a major logistics channel for shipping these imported agricultural commodities, which then unload in a port at Wuhan to be processed into livestock feed in central China. But when the water levels are so low, these shipping channels get cut off and the goods had to be unloaded closer to the coast. And that adds a lot of shipping time and cost for producers, which eventually trickle down to consumers.
Yeah, and the heat wave has also impacted industry as well, as energy demand surged to keep people cool and energy production was cut as the dry weather severely impacted China's hydroelectricity generation.
That's right. Because it's so hot, demand for electricity went up, and in Sichuan, we're looking at peak power loads setting new record highs at least 6 times in August, going up more than 25% year on year. And at the same time, because precipitation has dropped by half, hydroelectric power generation capacity also dropped by half. So it's a double whammy. Demand goes up, supply goes down. So the government was forced to take drastic actions to conserve electricity for households. They ordered factories to stop production for 11 days. In Chongqing, malls were also told to cut operating hours by half. So all of these are going to affect retail sales and industrial production in an economy already battered by repeated COVID-19 lockdowns.
Now, there is a little bit of respite, is there? I mean, the worst of the heat wave seems to be over for the year, but the prolonged heat wave has caused a buildup of water vapor in the air, and now there's the threat of flooding that could occur. And you mentioned earlier as well the cloud seeding. We could be facing another problem for China with regards to a deluge of water.
That's right. So many of those same areas that experience drought are suddenly experiencing torrential rains, partly because of cloud seeding efforts. So the government has issued flood alerts and dispatched emergency forces to the area. Over 100,000 people have had to be evacuated. And the floods are going to help fill those parched reservoirs, but it is going to crimp economic activity further because authorities have also asked, for instance, over 300 mines to withdraw their workers out of safety concerns.
With all this in mind, then, all these events only strengthen the call to take climate change seriously, don't they? And China is one of the world's top 2 emitters of carbon dioxide. So what is it doing as a result of all this?
One silver lining from this crisis is that it's going to accelerate China's transition into clean energy sources. It will increase the incentive for power companies to connect wind and solar power onto the electricity grid. It costs a lot of money to do that, and for a long time there wasn't enough market incentives to do so. But if hydropower becomes less reliable and prone to disruption because of extreme weather, companies would be more willing to invest for the long term. And China has made mitigating climate change its key priority in recent years. They have pledged to peak carbon emissions by 2030 and achieve carbon neutrality by 2060. So even as the government is investing in more coal power plants to meet the immediate energy needs at the moment, I think those long-term climate goals are not going to change.
Okay. Good news that China is pushing away from the more traditional energy sources and looking to more renewable ones. One last question for you, Minmin. What are you working on next?
Probably the 20th Party Congress that's coming up on October 16th.
Oh yeah, that is going to be a big one. We'll have a close eye on that. All these stories that are coming out of China at the moment, whether it be the heat waves or the floods or the continued push to keep COVID at zero, all playing a part as we lead closer to that Party Congress in the middle of October. Thanks for bringing us those stories from the ground up.
Thank you so much, Steve. It was great speaking to you.
The TV version of CNA Correspondent airs every Wednesday at 9:30 p.m. You can also catch up with it wherever and whenever you like on CNA.Asia. Do like and subscribe to this podcast version wherever you're listening to it so you can continue to get to know our correspondents as we take you behind the scenes to the stories they cover. Thank you for listening. Our correspondent team is made up of Jacqueline Chan, Daniel Lee, Crispina Robert, Clara Ong, and me, Steve Lai.